Welcome back to HQ. Some more college football talk will be on center stage this week. It started with the Big 12. Last week we had the SEC Media Days from Atlanta. The Big 10's Vegas, baby. How about the Mandalay Bay? That's where our man Chip Patterson will be. And, of course, the ACC also going on in Charlotte. And to talk all things ACC football and ACC Media Days is our college football analyst, Chip Patterson. Chip, thank you for jumping on. We talked about some of the odds earlier. There is no Power 4 team that is a bigger favorite than Clemson is to win the ACC. So with that being said, is there any chance someone can dethrone the Mighty Tigers?
Oh, there is certainly a chance, but that would be Clemson playing down to its potential and way down, Mike, because the way that I look at the Clemson Tigers going into this season, all they have done is retain and improve. You know, that starts with being able to keep that team together. You know, you've got some players like a Cade Klubnik who have been developing over the years, you know, slowly emerging to now being one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. You've got younger players who did not get lured away by the transfer portal, you know, freshman wide receivers, freshman defensive linemen that have all stuck around. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at this Clemson team and I'm looking at the way that Dabo's built it, and it kind of looks like a 2018, 2016 vintage. You've got an NFL caliber quarterback, you've got dynamic wide receivers that can make one-on-one plays, and you've got true capital D dudes along that defensive line. And so, you know, one way that we know that Clemson wasn't up to its form, that it had to sneak its way into the ACC championship game a year ago, is they weren't checking all of those boxes. But I look at this team, the way that it's built, and you throw in the improvement of bringing in Tom Allen to be your defensive coordinator, I don't think anybody can dethrone Clemson.
It's kind of funny how quickly things can change. It wasn't long ago everybody was piling on Dabo. He's not adjusting to the portal. He's not with NIL. Clemson's on a complete downward spiral, and here they are, favored to win the ACC again and get to another playoff. Speaking of playoff, last year it was SMU getting into the playoff. Not many people had that on their bingo card. They return a lot of key players, but can they have an encore performance?
They'll need a step forward from Kevin Jennings against the best teams that they play, because I think right now one narrative around SMU going into the season is a little bit of Kevin Jennings disrespect. That a quarterback who didn't start the year but did finish the year and got the Mustangs into the college football playoff, he's being left off a lot of your top 5, top 10, top quarterbacks in the ACC. And I actually am interested to see what he gets from the ACC voting media as it pertains to any kind of preseason all-conference honors. Because to me, Kevin Jennings is exactly what Rhett Lashley wants in terms of being able to operate an offense up-tempo, keep defenses off balance. But the problem is the last time that we saw him, he had a really rough start to the game against Clemson, did a great job leading them back into it to nearly force overtime before that long kick. But then in the playoff, he just looked overwhelmed by Penn State. And I think that was a Penn State thing, but there's a lot of Kevin Jennings disrespect out there. If he can play even better against the best opponents, you know, the Clemson, Penn State caliber opponents, then yeah, SMU can be back in the playoff, but he does need to answer that question.
It'll be a lot of fun to watch. SMU, such a good story a year ago. Miami was a good story until Syracuse. All they had to do is beat Syracuse, and they would have likely been in the playoff, and instead, of course, they were left out. They had the biggest portal pickup of all, the #1 pick in the draft, Cam Ward. He, of course, has moved on. Carson Beck is there, the former Georgia Bulldog quarterback. How high are we on the Hurricanes?
Not very high. I think they've got a talent level that gives them a high floor, but I'm not going to raise their ceiling until I see Carson Beck healthy and effective. Because Carson Beck has all the tools in the world. You know, he looks like he was built in a lab to be a quarterback. And he has, at his time at Georgia, put together some really, really good strings of performance. But when he kept turning the ball over during about a 6-game stretch in the middle of the season last year, especially struggling when he was under pressure, some alarm bells went off. But I will say, Mike, Mario Cristobal recruits well enough along the lines of scrimmage. His offensive line should be absolutely terrific. The defense should improve after a coordinator change. And I think that for Miami, again, you're just going to be favored against most conference competition. You're just going to have the talent edge, the size, speed, all of that is going to put Miami up in a top tier compared to most of their opponents. But against the very best opponents on this schedule, are we going to see them be able to have the X factor? That X factor to me is Carson Beck, and whether he's playing like the Carson Beck who could be a #1 pick in the NFL draft, or if he's playing like the Carson Beck that couldn't help turning the ball over in the middle of the 2024 season. That determines the ceiling. Miami, very high floor, but I will be late to push the ceiling up until I see it on the field.
Yeah, those are two killer non-conference games, albeit at home. But you've got Notre Dame and you've got Florida, which will have revenge on its mind, headed over to Hard Rock Stadium. Very intriguing games, no question, out of conference. Going back to the conference, that is the ACC. Florida State, you want to talk about Jekyll and Hyde. A couple years ago, you win 13 games. You're on the doorstep of a national championship. And then last year, with a new quarterback and high expectations, boom, 2-10. What does Florida State have to do to get back to the national stage?
They really need to hope that their evaluations were better. And that's going to go into Mike Norvell, why he changed his offensive coordinator, bringing in Gus Malzahn, changed his defensive coordinator, bringing in Tony White from Nebraska. They went and got another big portal class, just like they'd done the year before and just like they'd done the year before. But instead of winning 10 or 13 games as they did the prior 2 seasons, they just won 2, and they were the first ever 17th place team in the ACC standings. So Florida State whiffed. They messed up. That's an evaluation. That's a development problem, and that's why Mike Norvell made so many changes to the staff. Now, just because of the roster turnover, they again have some more portal evaluations that hopefully are going to work out better for them. But when you change your offensive coordinator, you change your defensive coordinator, and you go with the portal quarterback, you know what that tells me? You're under pressure, and you feel it. So what does this season look like? Hopefully it is Florida State leveling back to something close to what it expects to be, which is competing for championships. I don't think Florida State is an ACC championship contender this season, but I'd like to see the waters calm down just a little bit.
You know, taking a look at this conference as a whole, we talked about how good Clemson is and is expected to be. That's not been the problem. The ACC, from a depth standpoint, has been the problem. So if there was a league that needs some sleeper teams to make some noise, another SMU perhaps, this is the conference. Who do you see as possible sleeper teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference this year?
Oh, it is a team, a coach that are fearless in the face of top competition. Give me the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Often not favored to win a lot of games because they annually play one of the toughest schedules in the entire country with rivalries against both Georgia and Clemson. But I still think that the Yellow Jackets, bringing back Haynes King for his 6th year to go out there and be the leader of this group. We saw him put his body on the line against the Bulldogs. They get Jamal Haynes back at running back. Malik Rutherford is still at wide receiver. They had some portal losses, including a wide receiver that Auburn is very excited about in Eric Singleton. They lose Romello Height to Texas Tech, but I still think there's something about the mentality that Brent Key puts into that locker room that allows them to go out and have all of these wins against ranked opponents. The problem for Georgia Tech is they got to be more consistent, and they got to avoid the losses against teams that aren't a ranked opponent. So they've shown you what they can do in terms of playing with top teams in the conference, top teams in the country even. If they can get a little bit more consistent against their peers in the coin flips, then we could see Georgia Tech near the top of the standings deep into the season.
Yeah, one of those teams that fits that description you're talking about right off the bat, Colorado. Colorado's not ranked, but that's a tricky game. Could be juicy over there in Boulder to start things off. Chip, always appreciate the knowledge. Have fun in Vegas, my man. That should be a heck of a time covering the Big Ten Media Days. And don't forget, you can catch Chip and everybody part of the gang. A lot of college football insight on the Cover 3 podcast.